Okay, I want you to picture something. Go back in time with me to the 19th century, Victorian England. The air is thick with smoke, and all you can hear is the clanking and hissing of massive machines. This was the Industrial Revolution, right? An era totally obsessed with gears, steam, and raw mechanical power. To them, these machines were the absolute peak of technology. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? This quote just nails it, right? That Victorian obsession with machinery, it's a perfect mirror of our own hype cycles. The big difference, though, was they were all about automating physical stuff, manual labor. But even back then, there was one guy asking a totally radical question. His name was Charles Babbage. He was a mathematician, an inventor, a philosopher, and he dared to ask the question, what if we could build a machine that could automate not just our bodies, but our minds? All right, so let's get into it. You'll often hear Babbage called the father of the computer, but we got to put a huge asterisk next to that. His computers, they weren't anything like the electronic wonders we use today. Those came from people like Alan Turing, almost 100 years later. No, Babbage was dreaming in a totally different language. And this table just perfectly shows you how wild his vision was. We're talking about a machine made of brass and iron gears, literally powered by steam, and it was supposed to be the size of a room. He was trying to build our future using only the tools of his present. It's just an incredible idea to wrap your head around. So what kind of person even thinks of something so far ahead of its time? Well, it turns out Babbage wasn't just some dusty academic. He was a really fascinating and, often pretty rebellious character. You can see the arc of a revolutionary right here in this timeline. He was born rich, but he was immediately frustrated with the old ways of doing things, even at a place like Cambridge. And yeah, he held the same super prestigious professorship as Isaac Newton and, later, Stephen Hawking. But he spent most of his time trying to shake things up, not just play by the rules. He was a social powerhouse, a fantastic storyteller who could hold an entire dinner party captivated. He was bold, had strong opinions, was fiercely loyal to his friends, and totally dismissive of his enemies. And just like so many great innovators, he truly believed he was working on something bigger than himself. You could almost think of him as a Victorian Steve Jobs, a master promoter for his own world-changing ideas. And to really get a sense of his personality, you just have to hear this one story. The famous poet Lord Tennyson wrote a line in a poem that lent, "Every moment dies a man, every moment one is born." Well, Babbage actually wrote to him to point out that if that were true, the population would never grow. So he hilariously suggested a correction. Every moment 1 and 1/16 is born. It's just the perfect little window into his precise, scientific, and brilliantly quirky mind. Okay, now let's get to the real heart of it, the machines that became his life's work. The ones that would consume his fortune and define his entire legacy. So his huge ambition was actually sparked by something really practical. He was looking over these astronomical tables, and they were just full of human errors. And he had this light bulb moment. If you could build a machine to do the math, you could get rid of the errors, you could have perfection. He wanted to apply the logic of the factory to the work of the mind, a truly revolutionary idea for the time. So first, he designed the difference engine. Think of it as a super specialized, very complex calculator. But then he made this enormous conceptual leap forward to the analytical engine. This wasn't just a calculator anymore. This was a general-purpose machine that you could program with instructions. It was, in essence, the blueprint for every single computer that came after it, even though it never really got off the page in his lifetime. But here's the thing. Babbage wasn't just thinking about numbers and gears. That same industrial way of thinking led him to this incredibly profound economic insight, one that would go on to influence some of the biggest thinkers in history. In his book, he laid out what we now call the Babbage Principle. He basically figured out that if you take a complex job and break it down into a bunch of simple little tasks, a factory owner doesn't have to hire expensive, highly skilled workers for the whole thing. You could hire cheaper, less skilled people for most of the simple parts and only pay for high skill where you absolutely needed it. It's all about cutting costs. And this puts him in a really fascinating spot in the history of economics. You had Adam Smith, who'd already talked about dividing up labor to make things more efficient. Then Babbage comes along and adds this powerful new driver, reducing costs. And who picks up on Babbage's idea and runs with it? Karl Marx. Marx expanded on it to build his own theories about class and capital. Babbage was this critical, often forgotten link between two absolute giants of economic thought. So even though his great engines were never finished, Babbage has had this amazing second life in our culture. He's become a hero to an entire subculture he couldn't possibly have imagined. And that is the world of steampunk. If you've never heard of it, it's a sci-fi genre that basically imagines a future, but powered by 19th century tech. We're talking alternate histories filled with steam-powered airships, robots made of clockwork, and, of course, lots of cool brass goggles. In Charles Babbage, he is, without a doubt, the patron saint of steampunk. His actual, real-life dream of making thinking machines out of roaring steam engines and polished brass gears, that is the soul of the genre. He's the historical anchor for this whole incredible vision of a future that might have been. And that just leaves us with this incredible, tantalizing question. Babbage had the vision. He had the designs. He was a mechanical genius. But he was held back by the tech of his time, by money problems, maybe even by his own difficult personality. But just what if he'd pulled it off? What if a fully working analytical engine had clicked and whirred to life in the middle of Victorian London? It really makes you wonder, how different would our world look today?